Welcome to the Very Liberal Podcast with me, Oaten and Opik,
And me, Mark Oaten.
where we take a very liberal view of the world and give you the opportunity to feedback at our website. More of that later. Coming up in the show, we're going to be talking about the budgetary black hole discovered by ace digger Rachel Reeves. We'll be talking about COVID, or I would like to think COVID's return. Don't start, Mark. And the Olympic disgrace, the opening ceremony. Mark's got a couple of ideas too.
Let's talk about the black hole. Let's talk about the black hole. I mean, first of all, what I find absolutely fascinating is how these new words suddenly come into the political vocabulary. And the word black hole is now going to stick with us, I imagine, for 3 or 4 years. Every time Labour have to do something unpopular, they will refer to the black hole. It's brilliant. It's very, very clever. It gives them a get out of jail free card. And it's exactly what Cameron and Osborne did back in 2010 when they accused Labour Party of leaving them with a black hole. So it worked then, and I'm pretty sure it's going to work now.
Liam Byrne, the former Labour government minister, did help them a bit by leaving a jokey note in a table saying, there is no more money. Well, he's never lived that one down. And you're right. You don't have to expect anything other than the same treatment whenever you come into power. And 14 years later, there must be some sweet revenge for Rachel Reeves to pretty much turn those tables. But here's my problem, Mark. I predicted this actually here on our podcast, and I predicted it elsewhere. Everyone knew there was a black hole. Everyone knew the figures. It's not like some secret book. We all had a clear picture that there was a shortage. This is like buying a car. You selling me a car and saying there's a flat tire and the steering's a bit wobbly. And then I go off and I phone you up and said, the tire's flat and the steering's wobbly. You say, I told you so. This is the thing. They get away with it.
It is frustrating because we argued on this podcast that none of the 3 or 4 major political parties were actually addressing this issue. All of them were talking about trying to be fiscally responsible, but none of them were. Where was the cuts? Where was the tax increase? Where were the ways in which they would deal with this so-called black hole? And now, surprise, surprise, so soon after polling day, they're coming out of it all now. And I would imagine most people that voted are just shrugging their shoulders and saying, same old, same old. It's not good for politics to have this kind of exposure of a black hole so close to a general election campaign where nobody talked about it.
Oh, come on, you don't have to be surprised by it. We knew that the Uni Party, well, the only thing that's actually changed it's the colour from blue to red, was going to have to find something to try to differentiate itself. They're the same in terms of expenditure on Ukraine, same in terms of expenditure on just about everything. Oh, apart from the fact Keir Starmer wants to increase defence expenditure. Since when was Labour the party for war? But anyway, all of those are the same. And then they've out-Toryed the Tories because they've actually decided to junk the winter payments for lots of old people who are only just outside the benefit scheme.
And if you're one of those people over 65 or 70 and you voted in the last election, which remember was only a few weeks ago, did you know that was going to happen? No, you didn't. And now suddenly, a few weeks later, that benefit is being taken away from you. I actually think it's the right thing to do. I think it's crazy that if you like pensioners who have got plenty of money get that fuel, it should be targeted to the people that need it most. But that's not the point. The point is you didn't know about that when you voted for them and they suddenly spring it on you after the election. And if you're a pensioner in that category, I think you're going to feel pretty hard done by.
Yes, I was talking to Anne Widdecombe, actually, the former Conservative minister, now a Reform UK activist. Well. She's all right. She's a very together person, and she actually had some sympathy. I had the feeling on some of this, but the big picture here is, and she made a point. The problem is super rich or very wealthy pensioners probably don't need it, but this affects the ones at the margin. £300 is a lot if you're just outside the benefit system. Let's be honest, the state pension isn't exactly super generous. You spent 45 years putting into it and depend on it for your survival. That's not the only thing, though. I didn't get the feeling that Rachel Reeves really has a decent plan because we've got Looney Tunes Ed Miliband, who wants to put £8 billion or £7.5 billion into some crackpot green energy scheme, which he wasn't really able to explain with any credibility. So they got the money for that. That's like a third of the black hole money. And also, here's the other thing. I don't know what you think about this. After all the bleating and moaning about irresponsibility by the Tories, they go and offer the doctors a 22% pay rise. And then the doctors say it's not enough. We'll have that and we'll still go on strike. Bad start, Rach.
I don't think it's a great start. I think it would have been better, frankly, to have waited and to present a proper, thought-through, costed budget. And they could have then dealt with these choices as to whether you're going to cut a bypass around Stonehenge, you're going to get rid of hospitals, or you're going to make a change to the pension allowance. They could have done it all within one budget so we could see the pros and cons and the whole fiscal figure. But to do it in this way, I think so soon after the election, looks like a gimmick, and a bad gimmick at that.
One other point here, it's apparently escaped everyone's attention apart from mine, that a lot of this is caused by the asinine investment, you might not agree with me on this, in the lockdown on COVID, where Labour said that the Tories should have gone further. They would have wasted even more money on this, to use your phrase, crackpot scheme, which probably didn't save any lives, but cost us an economy. And on that point, apparently COVID, I'd like to call it Convid, is coming back. Da, da, da.
But it is. I mean, you talk anecdotally to your friends, and so many more people are off work with COVID. They've got colds, they've got a cough. The good news is that it appears that people are not being hospitalized at the same rates they were before, but there are people going into hospital. And I wonder just how long it's going to be before there has to be some kind of public policy announcement on this. Should we, for example, be wearing masks again if we have COVID? They're saying you can go out and you can mix with people, but is there a concern? At the moment, the public health people seem to be very quiet, but we all know somebody that's got COVID at the moment.
Well, I think I had it. Didn't feel too good, but there you go. You just live with it. The point about it is, though, you said something terrible, Mark. Masks. Masks were just a piece of fake news. Just utter nonsense.
And so why were we told to wear them then, Lembit?
Because it was all part of the state control. We have to be seen to be doing something. Let me ask you this question. If anyone in the government really believed that, how come Matt Hancock, he was, just to remind you, the health secretary, was caught breaking the lockdown rules with his girlfriend under a CCTV camera? How come the prime minister, oh, you've got to follow the rules, didn't follow the rules? He had parties, Partygate. It pretty much cost him his job. How come we had the current prime minister supping up and drinking with Angela Rayner, that he claims he forgot he was doing it in Durham? He was filmed doing that. All the people who, and Neil Ferguson, ran off to see his girlfriend. They all broke the lockdown rules. If it was really that fatal, then Dominic Cummings wouldn't have driven across the country to check his eyesight. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I don't believe any of it. I think we were
mask or no mask, Lembit? Did you wear a mask during COVID? Because I
did. I did, but I lost interest in it in the end, and then I didn't bother. And if it came back, I would be an objector.
No, listen, common sense to me says that if you've got particles leaving your mouth, which are going to spread COVID, then cover your mouth and nose up. And I'm just wondering whether there comes a point, if this COVID bubble continues to get an increase, should we be doing the same again? And if the advice is not to do the same again, then I question, why were we told to do it 3-4 years ago?
Because it was rubbish. It was just state crud. It just wasn't real. I had the 3 vaccines. The third one did me far more harm than anything COVID ever did for me. I just don't buy it, don't believe it. Look at the death rates. They're higher with people who've been vaccinated, and they increase proportionately with the number of jabs you've got had. It doesn't go down, it goes up. They admit it. Look at the number of sports people who've just collapsed. And a friend of mine, she's absolutely convinced her mum had a stroke. She's perfectly fit because of the vaccines. My feeling is it's the state that's done this. And then you've got horrible people like van der Leyen, who unfortunately is still in charge of the European Union, who, on top of all of this, then try to hold back our vaccines to punish us for leaving the European Union. The whole thing was a game played by people who didn't take it seriously. That's what I think. I think the real offenders here are the ones who duped us into having muck in our bodies when we should have let nature take its difficult and upsetting course, but it's course nonetheless.
Well, I mean, I fundamentally disagree. I back the science and I had my injections and I'm glad I had my injections. And I'll say this one thing about Boris Johnson. I'm not a fan, but he was able, despite the objections from the rest of Europe, he was able to fast track and get those vaccines. And I think it's the one thing he got right. And he saved many lives, in my judgment, by having that. But look, you and I can argue about this forever. The COVID inquiry is going through. It's had its first report. There are going to be lessons that are learned from that. The question, frankly, for a Labour government is behind all of those recommendations in the inquiry, there'll be a lot of expenditure, a lot of planning that needs to be put in place to stop this kind of thing happening again. Will they have the money for that, or will that go down a black hole as well?
You are so conventional. I predict. I think you and I can have a huge amount of argument about this because I predict if you try anything like that again, we'll finish off what's left of the UK economy. We're not going to get that finished now, but I don't think it was science. I was thinking it was pseudoscience. Interesting, though. One to watch for the future. One to watch from the past, but not twice. Did you watch the Olympic opening ceremony in Paris?
Wow. Wow. I mean, look, they couldn't control the rain. That was just unlucky. But the rest of it was absolute shambles. It was like watching one long, massive car crash for 4 hours. The commentary on the BBC was as dull as the event, and the boats and the athletes getting completely frozen and soaked through. What better way to kill off all of the prime sportsmen just before they're about to make the biggest sporting effort of their whole careers? Unbelievable.
Totally agree with you. And also, you will remember I wasn't too impressed with the Eurovision Song Contest. It was demonism continued. They mocked Christianity. They mocked the Last Supper. If you did that to Islam, to the Muslim faith, especially in Paris, you would have riots in the streets. But oh no, the Christians just have to put up with it. It was just a poke in the face to mainstream Orthodox Christianity. And then on top of that, you had the same problem we had the Eurovision Song Contest. People dressed up with apparently male organs hanging out. What was that all about? How is that inclusive? Doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is. How could I let my kids watch that? I have to say, it's put me off watching most of the Olympics. I was totally disgusted by the idea that that was inclusive. It was not. I think Putin described it as a gay pride march. There may be a place for a gay pride march, but it's not the beginning of the Olympics.
Okay, you're not going to get transgender people dressed up as drag and all that kind of stuff swimming and competing in the pole vault. So don't worry, you're going to be absolutely fine. Look, as a gay person, I'm all for having a bit of fun during the sort of the Olympics and the Eurovision. But I did think this went a little bit far because it had nothing to do with sport. It had nothing to do with France. For Eurovision, we know it's that kind of program where they celebrate stuff which is a bit outrageous. But this was off the point completely. But the ones I felt most sorry for were the poor athletes literally having to be stuck on those boats. But some of the social media commentary was fantastic fun. If you read any of it, there were a great comment about, I wish the English boat would sink the Spanish boat. That would create a bit of drama. Or these are boats that Rishi Sunak isn't going to be able to stop at the channel. And then with reference to that Lib Dem boat that hijacked some of the Tory stunts. There were lots of social media images of a Lib Dem boat with people waving Lib Dem flags coming along the Seine as well. No, the best commentary on the night was what you watched on X and Instagram.
Yeah, I would say so. The public really didn't buy it. And I have to say, if that is the shop window for Paris, I'll be going somewhere else in future. It might be to what.
Where is your favorite city? Where's your favorite city, Levit, out of it? I mean, I love Paris. It's my second favorite city. New York is my first, but I absolutely love going around Paris. But I have no idea where your favorite place is. You never told me.
The most romantic city in the world has to be Rome. It's grubby. It's falling down a little bit, but it's very romantic, and I'm quite fond of that.
It's a bit like you, Lembit. Grubby, falling down a bit, but very romantic. It sums you up beautifully.
Well, there we go. There's a good fit there.
Talking of falling down, we've got to have a quick word about President Biden. I mean, the gaffes were getting worse, the tripping up, the falling down, planes. It was inevitable in the end, wasn't it, that he would have to step down?
I didn't want him to step down. I accept you're right. I was wrong. He did have to step down because the writing was on the wall. but I didn't want him to step down because he was just a gaff machine, and it was great to watch. But in the end, it was when he called Vladimir Zelensky Vladimir Putin, and then he said that his own vice president was called Trump. That's a tricky one to escape from. And so inevitably, I suppose, he was forced out. I'm not really convinced he wrote his own resignation letter, though, do you?
I mean, that was, if I can put it bluntly, the final nail in the coffin, wasn't it? Those remarks. I think that, is it I can never pronounce her name.
Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris. Easy.
I want to call it Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
I think she's been behind the scenes planning this for some time. It was remarkable how quickly her campaign got off the ground within seconds, frankly, of the Biden resignation. And the money that has poured into her campaign, what is it, 82 million over the weekend? Huge organization, quickly getting behind her. So I'm pretty sure that she's been ruthlessly behind the scenes planning this. It didn't just happen lightly. This is something which has been on the cards for some time. Will it be enough to defeat Trump? I don't know. I think it's going to be closer, but I think it's going to go right down to the hanging chads in one of those states.
The hanging chad always sounded something that you should watch after the watershed. The thing, it's something you'd see in the French Olympic opening ceremony. Oh no, Bobby! What's that? It's a hanging chad. Look away.
They needed a good hanging chad. That's what they needed.
The thing is, you've oversold Kamala's appeal, because a lot of that money wasn't gained by Kamala. It had been held back by Democrat sponsors, who then said, all right, Biden's out. Here's the money that we were going to give you anyway. The big question is, do you think Kamala can beat Trump in a debate?
Yes, I do. And I think that he could end up coming a cropper if he repeats what he did to Hillary Clinton. And you'll remember when that was last time round, he intimidated her. He used his height, his weight to intimidate her in body language terms. He treated her like she was some little woman. If he makes that same mistake again to her, I think that could backfire on him. He's going to have to play it very, very carefully. And he's also going to have to reflect that he is a different public figure after the assassination attempt. Has he learned? Has he really got the wit about him to try and pull the nation together, which is what he promised to do after that attack on him? Or is he going to revert to type and be bullish and bully her? He could get this badly wrong.
I just don't think she's up to it. I don't think she's smart enough. At least the difference between Biden and Kamala is Biden was smart once. Kamala's never been smart. Her catchphrase is, she's like some sort of a puppet, and she makes these pseudo deep comments about the burdens of the past not being the burdens of the future, but it's just rubbish. It's word salad, and I just don't think she's up to it. I think that Trump is a smarter guy. I think he has learned to be more statesmanlike, much more measured. And I just don't think that Kamala's got it in her. I think that the trendy, lefty, liberal media, including the UK, including the BBC, are obsessed with the idea of Kamala beating Trump. They're terrified of a Trump government. I really want Trump to be in charge because he probably will stop the war in Ukraine in 24 hours and lots of other good things. He's pretty unpredictable. The problem is Kamala's depressingly predictable. She's going to be predictably rubbish.
Well, the fear of Trump is less than it was, in my view, last time round, because at least we know what a Trump presidency will be like. It's still, frankly, not something I fancy. But we'll have to wait and see. We've got a long, hot summer to get through. And then when it comes to November the 5th, we'll know exactly what's going on.
We haven't got a long, hot summer.
Well, look,
it's not going to be a long, hot summer.
Come on, please be optimistic about the weather, Len. But if you are one of these climate change deniers, but you've got to admit the weather's been all over the place. We've literally gone from those wet flooding streets in Paris to the next day it being 33, 34 and sunny and blazing. What is going on?
I'm not a climate change denier. You are. I say the climate always changes, but you're mixing up climate and weather again. The point is, we've had a washout summer. Then the sun comes out for 3 days. People worship. Oh, look, it's amazing. It's amazing. Then there'll be thunderstorms. Back to Paris. I actually saw recently the inevitable. Oh, it's climate change that's made the weather so bad in Paris. No, it's not. It's just weather. This is the point. Now, I don't like going into London much because it's always sweaty and tiring at this time of year. But frankly, this is not the hottest day I've seen it, or hottest summer I've seen in my life. It's not the wettest summer I've seen in my life. It's just somewhere in between. But there you go, climate fanaticist as you are, no offense, just like the Lib Dems, no offense. Let's just accept it's been a fairly washout summer, but my potatoes love it.
Well, my potatoes don't like it because the slugs have been everywhere all over them. It's been a summer for slugs, I'll give it that. But we've slugged it out a little bit on this program. I'm too hot to carry on, so I think we need to call it a day now, Lembit.
If you want to follow us, you'll find it at the bottom of the screen. We will be back regularly. You don't have to agree, but we'd love to know your points of view, as we always like to get your feedback. This is, of course, the Very Liberal Podcast. Give us your ideas about what you'd like us to cover as well. We'll go anywhere and discover anything. And also, it doesn't have to be politics. I'm Len Topic.
And I'm a very hot and sticky Mark Oaten.
Too much information. See you next time.